Hello, welcome to the 1 to 11 podcast, where we are trying to create a love letter to the game of football by building a squad. Now, we are doing this, taking a theme, we're building a football team around it. I am using the most English formation possible of the 4-4-2. I present this alongside my brother John, who will do some sort of exotic foreign formation, some foreign muck.
Yes.
And we are actually talking about foreigners today. So
yeah.
we're going to have a bit of a theme around the Premier League.
So, the next few episodes are going to be Premier League based. This one is South Americans who have graced the Premier League.
Now, we need to qualify to begin with. We don't believe this is the ultimate. There's no ranking here.
No.
What we want to do is open a conversation. Now, if you think I'm an absolute cretin for not putting in Faustino Asprilla, I'd love to hear why. I'd love to hear why Faustino Asprilla meant something to you.
And that's what it is. These are players who meant something. I'm not going to go, well, on FBref, did you know that actually Andre Silva has a better defensive rating than... That's going to be a bollocks because I can't...
When you look at the passes completed per game, it actually turns out Denilson was one of the most industrious midfielders. No, we don't care.
Don't care.
What did it mean to you?
I'm going to pick a player based on a gut reaction and a visceral reaction because one day he scored a goal that was so brilliant that I will never forget him. Even though I get the feeling actually a few people might have forgotten him. South Americans. So actually, the better South Americans generally end up in Spain, Italy.
Or if they come to Britain to then go to Spain.
Yes. As well for a while, obviously, if we could do South Americans who played in Italy, I could then include, my favourite players of all time, which are like Zanetti, Zamorano, Recoba. Unfortunately,
that's why I will never allow it as a theme.
But I'm gonna get that in one day. But because I managed to get Recoba with a team, I haven't managed to squeeze Zamorano in yet. One day. So these are all, I get the feeling, mostly going to be Brazilian, Argentinian. But
I've tried to make some sort of effort to not make this Brage and Zil.
Yeah, of course. We've had Costa Ricans in the Premier League. We've had Colombians, Chileans, Hondurans.
Wilson Palacios didn't make the team though.
He didn't.
Nor did Carlos Costley. I'm sorry.
Sadly, sad times. But yeah, we'll go through them as we go along. So you're going 4-4-2 because that's what you do most weeks.
It's easy to plan a 4-4-2.
Yeah, I'm going 4-3-3. Just because it was quite popular in sort of mid 2000s, 2010s, which is when a lot of my players were coming from.
A right and left midfielder are the hardest people to put to a team.
Yes. Do you want to start? We generally start in goal.
I'd like to start in goal. I'd like to put forward Edison.
It's Edison. Let's not kid.
Now, a lot of people will say, like him and Alisson are at the same level. Alisson is a very good keeper, but Edison for me just has this raw ability to change a game just by his distribution.
Yeah,
where Alisson also has very good distribution, but it's easy when your distribution is right back.
Yeah,
and also if you disagree with me on that, I'd love to hear why.
I mean, I'm going to tell you for now, I wouldn't because I don't want to argue about goalkeeper distribution. I think Edison redefines the goalkeeping position like no one since Manuel Neuer. Like, Neuer changed the way we think about how good we think about goalkeepers, and I think Ederson has now changed it. So, you're looking at like young goalkeepers coming through, like Meslier at Leeds,
Martin van der Voort at Genk.
These players have to be brilliant with their feet as well. They are almost playmakers.
They're quarterbacks.
Yeah, yeah, I think we've been very lucky to see Ederson for a few years now, and he's. I mean, as well, you forget that before Ederson, the goalkeeper position at Man City has been fraught. Like Joe Hart was very good for a while, and then just I don't know if it was confidence or whatever. He just seemed to. It sort of it was a steady decline and then fell off a cliff.
Well, it was the threat of Pep Guardiola coming in that changed him, because it was this kind of, you need to start playing with your feet, and that wasn't his strong suit.
No, but I think he was declining before then. He made silly errors, and I think and then they just got more and more, and of course they then had Claudio Bravo and Caballero. But Ederson, it's just been amazing, and I think it's strange to think I go watch a football team because I want to watch the goalkeeper.
But what a goalkeeper!
But what a brilliant player!
And as a United fan, it's really painful to say.
Oh yeah.
He's just, David De Gea has a special set of skills, but Ederson is, I think, one of the best keepers in world football easily.
Yeah.
So I'd like to go to right back next.
I've got Pablo Zabaleta.
Yeah, I also have Pablo Zabaleta.
He's not the most. He's not most exciting. He's a typical Argentinian sort of fullback. He's a bit hard, good player, and very dependable.
He was, for me, one of those players that just was instrumental in changing how Man City were perceived.
Yes. Yeah.
So he had the ability to link play. He was strong defensively when he needed to be. He also, his passing was absolutely phenomenal. And when you look at some of, there's been some fantastic fullbacks. And, you take the dearth of English right backs we have at the moment. We've got 4 or 5 right backs who could easily fall into any other national team and you wouldn't blink. The podcast dog there.
Yeah, I don't think. If you can't hear her, she's wanting attention.
So, Zabaleta for me was kind of instrumental in how City were perceived, and that back line of Company and him and Kolarov and AN other in defence was just.
Yeah, he came in with very little fanfare, really. He wasn't he was at the start of the money, but
he was a dependable player.
He was a very dependable player.
In his early days, he was known as like the Argentinian Beckham.
Yeah. Well, he never really emerged that way, but very served them for ages as well. But I did. Not that I didn't want to put Zabaleta in, but I couldn't think of any competition for him either.
Antonio Valencia was the other person I was thinking of, but the key thing for me, Antonio Valencia ain't a right back.
He's not a right back. No, he
played right back, but he is not a right back.
He was a winger who was
fast enough to track back,
thumbed into the right back position because Gary Neville had retired.
And Raphael wasn't the player we thought he was.
No, very much so. So we've both got Ederson and Zabaleta. Who are we going in the centre defence?
It's been a very short time that he's been in the Premier League, and I'm worried we're going to agree again. Thiago Silva.
Yeah. I was worried when he came in because...
Retirement tour.
Well, I thought it was a retirement tour, and it was just Frank bringing in the biggest name he could think of. But he's been brilliant. And he shows... I guess maybe because he was never the quickest. But he's been very he doesn't make errors, and as a defender, that is a brilliant thing. Because when he was at Paris Saint-Germain, I generally saw him because, like in a Champions League, he'd make an error or something like that, and maybe it's because he wasn't being supported. If you're playing next to Kimpembe, Kimpembe is apparently on his way to the Premier League. And if I was thinking about that, I would be holding on to my money.
But the thing is, the idea is that he could be paired with Thiago Silva again.
But then he'd still make errors because he made errors next to Thiago Silva anyway. But he's been an astounding defender. And yeah, it's annoying because he's made Chelsea a much better, a Champions League winning team.
Yeah, he has just this utter calm about him.
Utter calm. He reads the game beautifully.
He's an old school centre back.
Yeah, and he makes it look very simple. Who have you got next to him?
David Luiz.
I see. I'm sticking with Chelsea, but I'm not picking David Luiz.
I picked David Luiz because we spoke about what this means to us. Now, for me, a player who can score a amazing knuckleball free kick is this strange presence going forward, but can't defend. Which I think is an unfair thing that people say about him.
I think he was a decent player. I think he gets criticised, because he's very noticeable. Yeah. His errors stand out because he's got the Sideshow Bob hairstyle. Whereas, like, you would get errors from Rudiger and, I'm trying to think of some bang average.
Joleon Lescott.
Tyrone Mings.
Mings
John Stones. John Stones. Like, these guys don't get the same stick that David Luiz gets, but are just as error prone as him.
I think also it's just the lows were so low, like losing 7-1 in the World Cup semi-final.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we can put that all on him.
No, but he was very noticeable that game.
He was very noticeable, but they were literally they were all bad.
Oh,
but once again, he stands out. I've gone with another Chelsea defender. I've gone with Alex.
Very, very strong, decent defender, and was quite pivotal to kind of the one of the first, the Ancelotti years.
Yeah, and basically, I've gone with him because I remember him scoring an absolute thunder bastard of a free kick against Liverpool, and back in, I think it was a Champions League game, and I have no idea if they won or lost. I think they might have lost the game, but I get the feeling it was in their run up to when they lost to Man United in the final. But yeah, he was hard, like proper, like brute of a defender. But yeah, also like could absolutely spank a free kick. Hit a long range effort. Was just very fun to watch. As well, wasn't here that long, so maybe we never really saw too much of the downside of him because he went off to Paris and onto AC Milan and stuff like that. But yeah, it's
also the amount of effort Chelsea went to sign the man.
Yeah, they sent him to PSV, didn't they, initially?
Yeah.
Because he couldn't get a work permit, they bought him, sent him to PSV on a sort of joint contract when that's sort of the legality of that was
questionable.
Questionable, but not totally a stopper.
It felt very much a bit Football Manager. Apply for work permit. Okay, well,
send to other. Yeah. So yeah, they bought him for £1 million in the end off PSV because that was what was in their buyout clause from sending him to PSV, and yeah, he was just. I mean, his nickname was the Tank, And I mean, you look at the guy and you're like, yeah, that suits him. It really does.
Great header from corner as well.
Yeah.
Very good player. I think. I'd like to give you an honourable mention here, which is someone who I felt got a bit of undue. Nicolas Otamendi was, for me, decent.
He was fine.
But
Like, he at the end, he looked like a walking disaster.
But you don't win every English trophy.
Yeah,
as if you're a bad player.
No, and I think as well. I think that you forget as well at the time, like there was a lot of everyone in that Man City defence was sort of a walking disaster. You know, he was playing next to John Stones, who was still yet to sort of mature, playing with
Jolien Lescott.
And who was the French guy? They spunk. Mangala, absolute.
And they would have had. This is coming off the back of a City team that had a Jerome Boateng who was terrible for them.
He was fine. He just wasn't.
He wasn't what they were expecting.
He wasn't terrible.
Stefan Savic was terrible.
Yeah.
Matija Nastasic wasn't the player they thought he was going to be.
Yeah, basically. And actually, they swapped him for Ruben Diaz and like 40 million quid. And that's when the defence has become brilliant. But yeah, still playing at Benfica. He was fine. It just wasn't. I think I'd have had David Luiz ahead of him as well. So who got left back? I think this one might be another
Gabriel Heinze,
yeah. For a couple of years, I obviously am not a Man United fan, and he just seemed sort of unbeatable. Like, he was a brilliant defender, mean as well, like a proper shithouse of a defender.
What makes teams stand apart from other teams is the ability to adapt. And what I really liked about that Man U team at the time was their ability to adapt, because you had Evra, who could be this just presence everywhere. And then if you needed something a bit stronger, something a bit more defensive-minded, here comes Gabi Heinze. Brick wall. I loved Gabi Heinze. I think the only thing that kind of soured it for me as a United fan is how he left.
Yeah, he demanded a transfer to Liverpool, didn't he?
Yeah.
And then that didn't happen. I'm not even sure how Liverpool really could have afforded it. It feels like a little bit like Barcelona nowadays. Like, they were pretty much broke.
Yeah.
But yeah, he ended up going to
Real
Madrid, and then sort of flittering around half decent teams. Like, you played for like Marseille and Roma and stuff like that, but never really was the same level anymore. I mean, he could play at centre back if needed. Like, he wasn't the tallest, but as we discussed in previous episodes, you don't have to be tall to be.
He's 5'10", and that extra inch makes all the difference.
Yeah, it's that's what I say.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, wonderful player. And it was not fun to play. You used to sort of watch him in games. You'd see him just sort of kicking and scurrying after players, and you just thought you wouldn't want to play against him. Like, he wouldn't be fun, Where do you want to start for midfield? Because I've got 3 in midfield. You've got 4.
So I'd like to start on the right mid.
Okay.
I really tried to bring in as many countries as I could, because as I said, I didn't want to have kind of Brazil. So I've gone for a Peruvian right midfielder of Solano, Nobby Solano.
I'm not going to lie, I forgot about Nobby Solano, but that is a brilliant shout, because he was a superb player.
Really dependable right midfielder who good passing range, could fund a bastard when he wanted to, and played for a decent Newcastle team, played for an okay Villa team. Was in the Premier League for a long time and was decent, and also apparently an expert trumpet player.
Yes. Actually, no, he was playing for a very good Villa team. I think that's sort of the end of the Martin O'Neill years, wasn't it? Or the beginning of the Martin O'Neill years.
Yeah.
As they sort of threatened to break into the top four. I will never hear a bad word against Nobby Solano, quite frankly. Also, you could have thumbed him in at right back because he at the end of his Newcastle days he sort of was playing at right back.
Bobby Robson loved him as well.
Yeah,
and if Bobby Robson loves a player, they usually are pretty good.
Yeah.
Ronaldo was okay. Romario was okay.
It was. I mean, God, how much Newcastle swapped James Milner for him. Wow. A very young James Milner for him. But yeah, he's once again as well. I think he left Newcastle under a bit of a cloud. He signed a contract and then was like, "Yeah, I want to move to London," and then went to West Ham. When West Ham sort of were
this was the Icelandic
money, and never really works. It's a sad way for him to sort of leave the Prem, but I'm not gonna lie, I forgot about Nobby Solano, and that's a great shout.
Really enjoyed watching him as a footballer.
Well, I don't have a right midfielder, so I will start my central defensive midfielder, Javier Mascherano.
Great player. There's no doubt there.
Yeah, in the Premier League for only a short time. Came under suspicious circumstances to West Ham.
Hello, Mr. Ururguayan.
And then went to Liverpool, and then sort of kicked on, became an absolutely brilliant defensive midfielder. And his best years, sadly, were not in the Premier League. When he went to Barcelona, he was like an astounding midfielder, but Pep turned him into a central defender, and it just worked. His ability to bring the ball out, because previously being a midfielder, you could then rely on, PK or Puyol to be the bastard next to you. It just worked.
Yeah, and I think he's an unsung hero of that Barca process.
Yeah, you don't
associate him with Barcelona, which is strange because he was part of one of their most successful eras.
Yeah, and he was proper, maybe because everyone else was so classy, whereas Mascherano could do the he could do the dirty stuff.
He was exceptional at dirty work.
And
marking players out of game, just removing somebody from contention, and just had this. Yeah, Liverpool. You think at one point that Liverpool had a midfield of Xabi Alonso, Mascherano, and Gerrard.
Yeah,
God,
they let that go. And the sort of most. I never thought Xabi Alonso was that good for Liverpool. He was great. I thought he was very good at Real Madrid, but I thought he was sort of just becoming into himself by the time he left. And then at Real Madrid and at Bayern Munich, just became a whole new player. As well, a very famous story about Mascherano, he tore his arse making a tackle on Iron Robben. Last-ditch defending tears his arsehole. I almost included Fernandinho because he's been brilliant for City for such a long time, but I just think Mascherano's a better player. But they both do the sort of the dark arts that Man City, Pep Guardiola teams get away with more than other teams.
The first player I have for centre mid is very similar, and that's Gilberto Silva.
I've got Gilberto Silva playing just in front of him.
I thought when you look at that Arsenal Invincibles team, also you look at that 2002 World Cup team for Brazil, it wouldn't have functioned without him.
Yeah, no, he was a really underrated player. I think until maybe even Partey isn't really like the same sort of player, they've never replaced him.
No. And when you look at the Arsenal team that moved on and became, the last few years of Wenger, they missed that kind of bite that he had. And he was classy, but he could also do some of the dirty work.
Yeah, they became very nice, like a lot in terms of character, but they became very easy to play with. I think Gilberto gave them a bit of an edge, and they've never really replaced that. I've got him sort of in a bit ahead of Mascherano, but I guess in modern parlance you could call that a double pivot. I think he was actually he was better a footballer than people remember him.
Very much so.
So I've got him in midfield.
But I like people forget Lauren from the Arsenal Invincibles. I don't know, the right back Lauren, because you mentally build the team in your head, don't you? I always think he's kind of a forgotten element.
There's certain players, that are. I think. I don't know. It is because they don't have the longevity of players that we're sort of getting used to, like,
Bonson Company was always there, always part of that City team.
But you could look at it and probably go, Gilberto Silva's probably played more games with Arsenal than Vincent Kompany played for Man City, due to injuries and stuff. But I don't know.
You're gonna have to look now, aren't you?
I probably am. I'm probably gonna be very, very wrong. But you sort of
played 170 times for Arsenal.
Vincent Kompany played 265. So not really that close. But Vincent Kompany was there 11 years. Gilberto Silva was there 6. So he once again, like, he just didn't have the maybe the longevity, like, and Lauren, a few years later he's playing for Portsmouth. It
didn't feel the same.
It did feel the same. So that's why these players get forgotten. Who have you got next to Gilberto?
Juninho.
Oh fuck! I forgot Juninho. How did I forget Juninho?
Yeah, the little wizard Juninho.
Oh man!
Because obviously we have family from Middlesbrough, so I'll always have imprinted in my mind Brian Robson playing keepy up with Juninho at the BT Selnet.
Well, our aunt is a teacher in Middlesbrough, and she was. I remember when he signed, none of the kids turned up to class that day because, they all turned up at later, and they're like, "Oh, where were you yesterday?" And they're like, "Got to see Juninho." I'm upset with myself for forgetting him because in his, I think, 3 periods at Middlesbrough, he was a wonderful player.
Also, it feels kind of, no disrespect to anybody who's a Middlesbrough fan, but he always felt better than Middlesbrough.
Yeah, and it is hard to say and not sound disrespectful, but he went to Atletico Madrid, but during a period when Atletico Madrid...
So he got relegated from Borough to get relegated from Atletico Madrid.
Yeah.
And 2 teams, but based on the squads at that time, who should never have been relegated, either of them.
Well, he had a, I think, nasty leg break when he was at Madrid. I think he just got very unlucky with the team. Like, he was there 5 years, Madrid. He only played 55 games. Like, he had a leg break in, I think he then spent some time back at Middlesbrough, went back to Brazil because I think he was trying to get preparation for the World Cup in 2002. And, yeah, I don't know. I feel bad that I forgot him because, yeah, he's one of those players that he got the ball and you sort of moved to the edge of your seat because you knew something could happen. You know, maybe it's a sort of like Juninho, not Juninho, David Luiz, like because he was so small, sort of he stood out a bit, and but yeah, no, he felt like he could do sort of whatever he want with the football, and yeah, no, it is a shame. I forgot about him, but yeah, I'm going to pick someone in my centre midfield who was only here for a couple of years.
Okay.
He then went on to, I think, Turkey. He was Alano.
Yeah, it was a shame he joined City at the time he joined City because that was the Shinawatra money.
Shinawatra bought. He came in. They spent a lot of money. They bought like Alano, Manson Company, and then I think his first manager was Sven, and Sven basically just
go and do what you want.
Go do what you want. It seemed, and he could just hit a ball like no one else I'd seen at the time. Like just had this innate ability to make it do what he wanted it to do. I scored I think it was against Newcastle, scored an absolute beaut of a free kick. And unfortunately, the second season, it didn't go great. Mark Hughes came in, which should be the clue that things are going to go downhill. He started playing him in a slightly more defensive role because, of course, you watch the enigmatic centre attacking midfielder and you think, what we need him to do is cover the left back. So he ended up going to Galatasaray. Bizarrely, one of the few players in this squad I've seen live. I watched him play for Brazil. I used to go watch Brazil every year, and both times I saw him, he was absolutely electric. So he got in purely on some sort of positive memories for me.
And that's totally fair.
Who you got in left mid?
Alexis Sanchez.
I've got Alexis Sanchez as part of my front three.
I think if you take Arsenal in isolation, which I'm going to, as a United fan, he never played for us.
Who?
Exactly. Yeah. He left Arsenal to join Inter, as far as I'm concerned.
He had a couple of years gap, like a gap year, couple of years, just learning the guitar. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, for me, he was fantastic. He was absolutely fantastic. He had everything you wanted. He had an amazing range of passing. He was quick. He was dynamic. He was skillful. He could shoot long. He had everything you wanted. And also, the thing that I think really set him apart from us was just his versatility. Because you could play him anywhere. You could in this team, you could put him up front, any part of midfield, and he'd do an amazing job for you.
Yeah, it basically could play across the front three, play midfield. I mean, as well, like just he had the sort of exact opposite of like the way he portrayed himself was the exact opposite of Mesut Ozil. Like he just looked like this ball of energy, and he was like a ball of energy. But I guess as well, a player like that, like because every year he'd end up going, because at the time as well, the Copa America seemed to be a yearly thing. He'd end up spending every summer playing for Chile. Wouldn't really have a break, come back to Arsenal. It isn't a surprise in the end that his performances went downhill because people shouldn't be playing that much football.
I think he had a clear defined role at Arsenal.
Yeah.
When he came to United, he didn't have that.
No.
You couldn't. There was too many players in that team to then go, You can't go to Wayne Rooney and go, Alexis is here. When you're free, give the ball to him.
Yeah.
It didn't work. But when Alexis Sanchez at Arsenal, when Arsenal could buy players from Barcelona.
Yeah.
And also that just felt nice because, Barcelona bought Arsenal's players. That's how it worked.
Yeah, it was. It felt like a sort of a reversal of how it had been for a while.
For years,
Fabregas,
Petit, Fabregas,
Henry,
Alex Song. You forget Alex Song was very good for one
Haleb
season.
was very good for them. Was absolutely appalling for Barcelona, but
yeah, there's a reason he was playing for Birmingham City later on.
Yeah. I'm just looking at it. He scored 20 in 2016-17. He scored 24 goals. Like, that's an astounding return for a winger, especially.
Yeah.
It did go slightly downhill, but not really. Like, his performances dwindled in the final year, but it wasn't until Man United it went like completely off a cliff. Played there a year, and then moved on to Inter, where he won the league.
Well, basically, they bought 3 players who weren't suiting our system, who then won the league. So buying Lukaku, Sanchez, and Ashley Young from us and winning the blooming league with them.
Yeah. Mental thing, but yeah.
So let's go to the least surprising part, because I know who one of your strikers is.
Yeah, but you could probably guess who 2 of them are. They are I'm guessing you have Aguero.
You were building the South Americans in the Premier League and you didn't have Aguero.
You're a
fucking idiot.
First player on my list was Aguero. The best forward, out and out forward since Henry.
He just had this air of dependability that he was going to score regularly.
Yeah,
and see what I think I liked him. He felt very much like a 90s striker that teams weren't planning for him, but he was always going to score.
You had to. I guess you had to plan for Aguero, but you couldn't because he could.
He had everything.
The team, Man City were, especially under the Pep years, that sort of rehearsed move of moving out to the wing, a low cross for either Aguero at the front post or Sterling at the back post. They're going to keep doing that. That's meat and veg for Aguero. That is what he wants. It's absolutely brilliant. And before that,
him and Zeko, the
little
like big man, little man thing there.
But he could hit. He was deadly from outside the box.
He was once he was here for a guy who was wasn't tall.
No, and just basically like once he was dribbling, it was like the ball was an elastic. Like he just
He's only 5'8".
Yeah,
and he could score headed goals. He only played 4 times for Barcelona.
I know, absolutely
criminal,
absolutely
criminal.
Yeah, and just a wonderful player. Really, like, there's no point going too much into it, really, because we're not going to say anything new, because he was just brilliant. Like, he was, I guess there was a fragility to him. Like, he never, I don't think, really had a full interrupted season. But yeah, he scored more than 10 goals in every year apart from the last one, when I don't know if his relationship with Guardiola broke down a bit, or there was just less trust in him, but he still scored 4 goals in his 12 appearances. Lows of 12 in 2012, and highs of like 26 and 24, and generally was always above 20. It's, I was about to say, he still got 100 caps for Argentina as well.
Played in a World Cup final.
Yeah. In a team with, sort of, I guess when he started, it would have been Crespo and
the end of the Riquelme era.
Batistuta days. But also, against Higuain, all these brilliant players, just...
He was a constant.
Absolute constant. An absolutely astounding footballer. But who have you got playing up front with him?
A man I hate.
Yeah.
Luis Suarez.
I've got Luis Suarez. Playing on the sort of right of my front three, because I think you can play anywhere.
I mean, he showed that at Barca. He could pretty much play anywhere across the top.
Yeah.
If I could put any version of him, it's him at Carrow Road.
Yeah.
Him playing Norwich City. For some reason, Norwich City just lit the blue touch paper of that man. Well, that's the one person you don't want to light the blue touch paper of, but
yeah,
he just, for all the craziness, for all the stupidity, for all the weird shit, for Arsenal bidding 40 million and £1.
Well, John Henry did come out a few years later and said, the agreement was that we'd let him go if someone bid more than £40 million for him. But what we did was we just said no and broke the rules of the contract. Because obviously the Arsenal had been talking to the agent, they knew that if they bid more than £40 million, they had to accept the offer. But then Liverpool just refused to accept the offer. Just refused to accept it. I know the fact that it's £1 is sort of ridiculed by people, but actually it was a legitimate thing. Liverpool was just like, actually, we just want to keep him, actually. And they caught that almost worked. They were so close to the league that year, but then...
I've never been so happy to see Yannick Bolasie ripping Liverpool apart.
Yeah. Ended up moving to Barcelona for like £75 million a couple of years later.
But what a signing for them.
Oh, brilliant. But yeah, that year when they almost won the league, he was an outstanding player. Like, in a team with Coutinho and Gerrard and whoever else, he was the standout player.
Oh, he was the heartbeat of that team. Things were designed for him.
Yeah.
And rightly so, because a lot of people saw him as a panic buy.
Yeah.
They were replacing Fernando Torres at speed.
Yeah, I think it took him a while to settle, I guess, but
when he did,
God, he was a
disgusting machine.
Yeah. Of course, you can't say all the great without ignoring the bad, like the
racism, the biting. Alleged racism, the biting. Alleged biting.
Well, the alleged biting. No, it's biting. There's no point. He bit Ivanovic. He bit Chiellini in the World Cup.
Otman Bakal in Holland as well.
Yeah.
So
It was following the bite on Chiellini that finally, that's what seemingly made Liverpool get rid of him.
Yeah.
But I mean, I always think the biting against Chelsea is particularly egregious because he then went and scored the winner. But yeah,
just a phenomenal
player.
Well, he also a little bit like Aguero just felt like a bit of a throwback because he would have easily survived in the 90s, would have survived in the 80s. He's a bit like this. There's that choral song, "Dreaming of You." Right?
Yeah, timeless. Could be any.
You could release it any time from 1955 onwards, and people would think it's topical. I see Luis Suarez a bit like that. He could have survived in any era.
Yeah, I think he'd have enjoyed actually the sort of attention of sort of slightly harder footballers.
And also he would have wiped the floor with people like Neil Ruddock.
Oh yeah. And I think he's off to America maybe.
I'm surprised there hasn't been more interest from English clubs for him.
Maybe I think England might be scared off by the
Craziness.
fighting and the racism.
But a phenomenally fantastic footballer who I couldn't help but have a grudging respect for.
Yeah.
And as a United fan, picking Aguero and Suarez as a forward line.
As a Leeds fan, I wanted to include Rafinha because he's been brilliant for 2 years. But that would have had to have meant leaving out Alexis Sanchez or Suarez. I just couldn't do it.
He's an Nobby Solano. I'm sorry.
He had, Lobby Solano had longevity. But
I'm sure Barcelona were interested in Nobby Solano at one point.
Probably.
I have no doubt.
I mean, they're probably going to bid 15 million quid for him this season because why not? They're trying to buy everyone else despite having no money. But yeah, so that's our teams. Do you want to go through your teams just as a quick?
Yeah, just some other notable mentions I had here. One of them being Willian.
Yes, for a couple of years was brilliant. The Arsenal days were long best forgotten, but he was very good, especially early on at Chelsea.
Ramirez,
yeah.
Was a midfielder I really liked because he just didn't look like he'd fit in, but just had this unlimited energy.
I always never going to get into the team ahead of Aguero or Suarez, but I always found Paulo Wanchop really fun. I wanted to include, if you're looking to include a Costa Rican.
Not South American.
Is that Middle Americas?
I will double check now.
As well, when he was at Blackburn, Roque Santa Cruz was a fantastic player. The sort of Manchester City days are worth forgetting, but yeah.
They are in CONCACAF. So I'm afraid Paulo Wanchop, and
Central America.
As a United fan, I'm not allowing Paulo Wanchop because for some reason he always was 150% against us.
Yeah, but okay, well we'll forget him. And kind of our guy's currently playing in the Premier League, and I think could be brilliant. He's Romero at Tottenham.
Oh yeah, fantastic defender.
Really, it's annoying how good I think he's going to be.
Yes,
I think he could be fantastic for many years if they can keep him. But we'll leave it there. We're on the socials, basically everywhere at the 1 to 11 pod, be that Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. If you'd like to tell us why you think we're wrong, or why you think we've forgotten somebody, or if you just want to, suggest a 1 to 11 for us or whatever else,
get involved.
That's where you can find us. But until our next episode, we'll see you then, and have a good time.
Thank you very much.